Elizabeth, hello.
Hello.
Nice to have you here. I am so excited to have this conversation with you. And first of all, I would like to introduce yourself by yourself.
Okay. Oh, thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for all the work that you do at Bridge2Food. As you mentioned, my name is Elysabeth Alfano. I'm the CEO of VegTech Invest. VegTech Invest is focused on investing in the public companies, publicly traded companies that are focusing on innovating to make a more resilient and efficient, cruelty-free and prolific and less damaging food supply system. So we're focused on the companies along the supply chain that are interested in food systems transformation and are dedicated in their work to doing that. There are good, positive, we call them good actor companies in the public markets. We've done all the research around the globe to find the best 40. We've put them together in a publicly traded fund, EAT-V, and anyone can buy that ETF and have exposure and help drive capital to those companies focused on food systems transformation. In addition, I am a consultant for multinational companies, C-suite executives, usually helping them find white spaces in the food system where they can make an impact, where they can have room to grow and really add value to the entire system and add value to their company. So I work on finding white spaces, strategy, and communications for the same.
So you contribute to our first session in 2025 this year, talking about economics. Economic in the space, as you said, is the new human diet that we try to promote. That is, we say to be holistic, a conscious omnivore to balance more vegetable sources in the diet for a better planet protection and human diet. So is the economics that you support to these companies with that mission, that purpose is very, very good. And in that speech related to economics, we address that as a category, the ecosystem bridge to food, we consider that we need to take very clever decision to move to the slope of enlightenment that it is according to the Gartner hype cycle. We are in the truth of disillusionment and we will discuss why. And now we need to move up. So what is your recommendation for companies already embracing that beautiful mission that they have to do right now?
I feel compelled to answer in two ways. I want to answer your question directly, but I also want to say, and thank you for talking about mission, and thank you for talking about the positive impact that this can have. But for your listeners, I want to underscore, make no mistake, there's a lot of money to be made here. So please don't consider this a concessionary investment that your company must do in R&D or in your investment portfolio, that this is some sort of concessionary act. It is not. The food system is changing right beneath our feet. We can talk about that. It's changing today. It's not some lofty dream by a bunch of people on a street corner with the sign that says, do this for animals or something. This is a solid business proposition, and there's a lot of money to be made here. So, and if you need indicators of that, you can see government spending all around the globe in this sector. Happy to give examples of that. So your original question was, what would I say to business executives who are interested, who are maybe already in this sector, but feeling the depths of despair, if we will?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I would say, please reach out to me and let's strategize, because if you can hold on for the next, let's say 12 months, maybe 18 months, maybe 10 months, we are coming out of this. And the reason that we're coming out of this is I believe we went into the sector, again, addressing that first point, really focusing on sustainability and climate change. And that really is wonderful, but it doesn't necessarily drive business.
Mm-hmm.
And the business opportunity is becoming more apparent now that the Department of Defense is spending 1/3 of their bio-industrial R&D budget. 1/3 is on food innovation. 1/3 is on materials innovation. And then 1/3 is actually on defense, what you would think of,
Yeah.
military. So 1/3 of a military budget, for lack of a better expression, Department of Defense budget of this biotechnical program is on food innovation. That tells you that there are other indicators besides climate change. Food insecurity is an issue of national security for the United States. So you're seeing real money being poured into this, and that's just in the United States, let alone other areas around the globe that are experiencing food insecurity right now, the Middle East, et cetera, where there are water issues. And so you have pressures coming from all sides, and
Yeah.
that's going to bubble up into a forced shift of the food system. And those players that are out in front have real equity by being out in front and leading the sector as it transforms. So I'm happy to strategize with those interested in this, because I think if you position yourself correctly on the chessboard, in 10 to 15 months' time, you're going to be well placed to capture the business.
Okay, and if we look at I am from the R&D perspective, and we identify that some few blocking stone to move up on the slope of enlightenment are taste and texture. So we need to be right in taste and texture as the consumer expect. Then nutrition, providing the right level of protein, the good and high quality fat in the product. Then is all about sustainability, because we say it's more sustainable, prove it. So show data. And then parity price. First product in the market were higher premium price than the animal counterpart. So that is a struggling consumer. And last one is good labeling, that they don't see names of ingredients they don't recognize. What do you think about this R&D limitation, and how you can support organization on really overcoming those issues? No?
Yeah, so this would be the tenets of the strategy that we could work out together. I know that everyone talks about taste, price, and convenience. I really believe it's price, price, and price.
Yeah, I agree.
So if you can bring that price parity, then everyone's willing to try. Now you have to be there with taste. No one's going to put up with a product that doesn't taste good, but it really has to compete on price. And then the rest falls into place. So obviously you wouldn't go to market with any product that wasn't well labeled, be it, a novel product or an old product. So, of course you want to have your labeling, and we live in a time of transparency of supply chains, and therefore setting up the infrastructure early is an absolute must now to be able to disclose your footprint and really read the data and have that data at your fingertips. But that, again, all was easily set into place with AI, et cetera. But many frameworks exist. So that's quite easy. It's really getting that price, and that comes from scale, and that comes from capital. So another thing to discuss in the strategy is, as we get out of the depths of despair, if you will, is to really find those sources of funding, and that
Yeah,
can come internally from R&D, but that is also, there's more and more, the Department of Energy is also
yeah,
funding.
yeah,
I'm speaking for the US, the Department of Energy also funding food innovation along with the Department of Defense. So there's money out there, and there's private money, and then we're driving money in the public markets to companies, publicly traded companies. So get your hands on capital, and that's going to help the R&D flow for the better product and the price parity.
yeah. And thank you for this perspective. And as you said, Elizabeth, we Bridge2Food identify yourself because you are connected. You are a communicator as well. Very
That's
good communicator. You are in radio show. You have your own podcast. And I would like to take a little bit more about you, Elizabeth. If you would like to share with us one passion that you have today, which one would be top of mind?
Oh my God, there's so many.
Yeah, pick up one.
In addition to my work,
In life in general, work, personal, hobbies.
oh my word. Well, I have to be in nature all the time, or I'm just not.
Really?
Oh
Okay.
my gosh, yes. Yeah, I really am very connected to the elements.
Yeah.
and I need to feel that I'm in the elements and have access to the elements of lots of land and, big
Water.
sky, ocean.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Consistent with your mission and vision. So very well
very much.
aligned.
Yes, very well aligned.
Can you share with us one pride? Something that you are very proud of. Can be something that was in the personal side or in the professional side. Can be a big failure, but a big learning that has a big impact in your life.
This answer's a little bit nebulous, but because it's a skill that applies to many things. But I think I'm proud of my skill to adapt,
Okay,
to be,
resilience. Yeah,
yes, resilience through adaptation, through
very
being
important.
quite nimble.
Yeah,
So not so rigid that things can't change. I can really move with the changing times.
very good. Very
Yeah.
good. Today, in the past, we talk a lot about IQ. We measure cognitive intelligence in our future candidate, but then we start to talk about emotional intelligence, very important to have people in the working environment. And today it was included what is called adversity intelligence. How do you
Ah.
handle adversity and the resilient piece that you mentioned? Very well, well done. And if you want to share with us one objective that you currently have right now.
One objective that I have
Yes,
right
can
now.
be professional or personal. Something that when you wake up in the morning is top of mind and drive you moving forward.
It, I would like to see the global food supply system shift in my lifetime. So I'm giving that a 30-year time span. And I really would like to see that happen. I don't, it's a little esoteric for the world out there. I believe that there's so much calamity in the world today. I'm from Los Angeles. Obviously, the fires, uh,
Yeah.
devastating on so many levels. Politics, you may be happy or not happy about the outcome of a recent election in the US. But on either side of the aisle, you feel that it's tumultuous, that it's
Hmm.
volatile. The markets are volatile. I mean, and I don't think this global volatility will settle until we solve some of the critical issues in the food supply system. I'm not saying that food is the only thing that impacts this volatility, but I just don't see, given the level of damage, destruction,
Hmm.
cruelty, intensity, disease, pandemic risk. I mean, I just don't see the world settling down when you've got so many irons in the fire for
Hmm.
disruption, and food has the most irons in the fire
Yeah.
for disruption, which also means that it's also its silver lining. It has the
Hmm.
most irons in the fire for um, healing, if that's the word, or for
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
amelioration.
Hmm.
And so, and what's even more exciting, because I am an eternal optimist, is that
Oh,
um,
nice.
I'll get
You
back
have
to
the orange color of optimism.
of
So good.
optimism. So, according to the World Bank, they're expecting to see 450 to 650 billion invested in food systems transformation each year for the next 10 to 15 years. According to, from my podcast, Upside and Impact, I do a podcast for the investing community.
Okay.
Senior energy analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence, Rob Barnett, says currently they spend 2 to 3 trillion on the energy transition,
Hmm.
and that's for the foreseeable future. Well, 650 billion is a lot less than 3 trillion. So when you shift food systems, you can do it for a lot less money, which means you can do it a lot faster. And food systems, as we just discussed, you're talking about personal health care, planetary health, healthcare costs, pandemic risk, antimicrobial resistance, animal cruelty, climate change, enormous water pollution, overuse of land and water, food insecurity, which means political instability. I mean, that list is, and we haven't even
Mm.
talked about justice and the working conditions. Bloomberg has done a great expose on underage children working all hours of the night with chemicals in it. The industry needs so much help, and its impact on the world is so great that when you do this and you can shift it pretty quickly for less money, well, the less money makes it quicker transition, you have a better chance of impacting this tumultuous state we're in. That's a
Yeah,
little
and that
Eric, but
very nice, and I loved this aspiration. In the short term, what can be a low-hanging fruit? Something that the industry who are already involved in this vision and mission can, with little investment, have a high return on investment. That is almost there. You need to do still a little bit effort to make it happen.
I think fermentation
Okay,
is that because it's not a novel technology.
yeah,
It's something that people recognize already. It's quite
thousand
good.
of years. Yeah.
Yes, right. Thousands of years, quite good for gut health. So that's working with the growing trend of health and wellness. There's funding for it,
Yeah.
and it can, for lack of a better expression, because we should talk about the hurdles as well in the industry, it can slide under the radar of the meat lobby, which has a lot of
Mm.
money, which owns politicians, and which is quite outspoken in terms of putting enormous blockages in place for the food systems transformation to not take effect. Fermentation kind of rides on the outskirts of competing with meat directly, and therefore it's kind of hidden in the supply chain, which is where we see all the growth at VegTech Invest, by the way, that B2B model.
Hmm.
It's kind of hidden in the supply chain as just an additive protein. And so I think it avoids the scathing criticism, funded true or untrue. Both are funded by the by the meat lobby. And it serves a great purpose.
Yeah, I
So
am 100% with you. You know, yesterday we had our ecosystem call associated with a European project that is named Hell Firm. It's a 13 million European project with multiple industrial partners, and the focus is fermentation. Fermentation is, as you said, something that consumer immediately recognize, good
yes.
for them, and overcome taste and texture. You can optimize the health benefit. So it's an impressive technology. I fully agree with you for the low-hanging fruit. And what is the biggest challenge ahead? The biggest one, the one that we have to make it right, but require a lot of effort.
It really is that meat lobby. I really see that.
Yeah.
They do own politicians, and that means they own policy.
Mm.
And,
Yeah.
that means they thwart funding. I mean, it's really sizable.
Yeah.
So I think and many might see this as unfortunate, but I think the distribution channels that they own and the global teams that they have and the global ad budgets, you're going to need to find a way to work with existing industry. So it's one of the reasons why we focus on publicly traded companies. I love startups. It's such a sweet
Mm.
story, feels
Yeah.
so hopeful. But let's be real, they have no impact. They have
Mm.
no money. They have no impact. Most of them are out of business in a couple years' time. That means your dollars invested went nowhere. Even if they do survive, their impact is quite small.
Yeah.
So you really have to work with the existing large players, which is why we've researched the globe to find the good actor players. And there are about 40 of them, and they're in our fund. And you just have to slowly make it, which is why I started in the beginning of this conversation saying, well,
Yeah.
before we talk about like rainbows and lollipops, let's just
Mm.
focus on the fact that there's a lot of money to be made here. You need to
Love it.
just attract the meat industry with the money to be made.
Yeah. Well put. Um, Elizabeth, would you like to ask a question to myself?
You are based in Europe, yes?
Yeah, in France, the south of France.
Oh, you are? I'm going to Bordeaux in May.
Oh, really? I am
Yeah.
in Nice, near Nice. I work for
Oh,
Man. It's a flavor company. and we produce here in the south of France.
But you don't have a French accent.
No, I am Argentinian. I live outside of Argentina over the last 25 years. I live in Chicago for 3 years, also in Brussels, in Belgium for 10 years, and in France for 10 years. So a little bit around the world, but I am originally from Argentina.
What a beautiful life. Oh, I just love that. Well, what are you seeing in Europe? Because I mean, my work is global and I work with multinational companies globally. Um, but recently with the election, et cetera, and the Department of Defense coming out with their grants and the Department of Energy coming out with their grants, I've spoken about the United States, but I see Europe as further ahead in sustainability, that transparency, supply chain, and disclosing your emissions. I see the European consumer as getting it a little bit more, maybe not as barraged by the European meat industry. So what are you feeling is transpiring right now in Europe?
Nice question. Very, very good. Thank you, Elizabeth, for asking that. Since I live in the US and you know very well as well the regulation and the environment in the US, um, you embrace, or the consumer in the US are a little bit more open to accept new technology. Food is quite
Mm.
sometimes related to emotion, tradition, and European are quite attached to tradition, and then everything related in the labeling is non-GMO. So there is a lot of bias against the industry and especially developing this trust. So my position perspective in the biggest challenge is how do we communicate to consumers in a way that they understand the language and they accept that what we are doing in terms of science is good for them, is good for the market, is good for the environment and the human health. So that is very important, particularly in Europe, because it's a quite traditional, a very modern approach, but very traditional in food in terms of consumption and labeling.
Yes, yes. I see that. And for the European consumer, how well, because this is where I feel anyone I speak to in the United States or abroad, I do work in Asia, et cetera, um, I feel that people have a very hard time wrapping their mind around the scale of the food system.
Hmm.
They see food as something small on their plate, as if everyone could have a small regenerative garden in the back
Yeah.
and would feed the world. And of course, that doesn't work. That works for the wealthy who have that plot
Yeah.
of land, which is wonderful. But when you start thinking about feeding Nairobi and Mexico
Hmm.
City, New York City, the this doesn't work. And so people have a glorified idea of what food could be, and it usually involves going backwards
Yeah.
to when we had 4 million people on the planet, not
Yeah.
8 billion, excuse me, 4 billion, not 8 billion, and we're
Yeah.
going to 10 billion. So I work on communicating that to people to understand what it takes for everyone to have food, not just some people to
For
have
the
food.
10 billion, because
Yeah,
everybody has the right to eat
that's
well. And particularly this growing population will be in area of the world that they need food security guarantee. And
yeah.
then we need technology, we need food science, we need industry to produce in the local scale, but also in the biggest one. So food science is critically important to feed these 10 billion people, but we need to be careful in the way as we communicate to consumers because sometimes we made mistakes as industry, a little bit too arrogant to say we are right, this is
Oh,
science based, but consumers need to understand. So if we don't communicate in a simple way, it will not work. So tell me something, Elizabeth. You have an MBA from 1991. So you go back 30 years ago when you have the young version of Elizabeth at that time, at that age, with the experience and seniority that you have today. What would be your advice and recommendation for this young lady called Elysabeth Alfano?
so when I got out of business school, I grew up in France, actually. So when
Wow.
I got out of business school, which was in the United States, but it was
Yeah.
with an international program, was hired by the Kellogg Company to work in Paris. And 3 weeks before I was meant to move back to Paris, they put me in Battle Creek, Michigan, which was exciting because it was the headquarters and I had Special K and frosted mini wheats. But Battle Creek, Michigan isn't Paris. So as I was so excited to be back traveling the world at that time, right after business school, and I landed in Battle Creek, Michigan, I think I would tell myself, um, gosh, this just sounds so incredibly arrogant. But I would say live your life on your own terms, which is what I've been able to do. So
No, that's very good.
I
That's
don't want
very
to say
good
that I wouldn't. Yeah,
that you confirm that. I am
yeah,
inspiring myself with this.
yeah.
It's very good and feeling proud because along the way, 30 years, I'm sure that you have some failures and great
Oh, yes.
success, but you count everything as a great journey, right?
Yes, and it's not, it doesn't feel like failure. It's a disappointment when it
No,
doesn't go your way.
yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't feel like failure because I've been living it. I've been living the life I w wanted to live. Yeah, I've been living life on my own terms. So that feels very joyous.
yeah. You know, Brené Brown is an author
Yeah.
that I like a lot. She said that if you are courageous and you take risks, you will fail. So you will fall because there is no way. If you are challenging yourself, it's not
Yes.
possible that everything will go smooth and fine. But this falling, don't call failure, you call falling, you wake up, you talk about resilience as you demonstrate in your life and learn from this falling and then recover and keep growing. So that was
Yes.
a great message. And I like to close this podcast with my last question that is, what is for you the most important human skill on others? That can be your investor or can be the startups or the major corporation. We are all human beings. And what is the most important human skill that you need to have in the community?
Listening.
Listening. Okay. Empathy and be okay. Excellent. Yeah.
It, it Empathy is an offshoot of listening,
Hmm.
but I'm gonna even be a little bit more hardcore and say, like, train yourself to listen. And by that, I mean taking in information and deducing from that information. I mean, thinking and listening at the same time
Yeah.
to draw conclusions from what you're seeing. And that listening is global. It's auditory, but it's also visual, and visual cues. Doing a
Yeah.
lot of traveling young helped me to read, people's body language and emotion. So
Yeah.
you're reading and listening to those emotional cues as well as the data. And from that will grow empathy, but also grow smart analytical skills, also grow people skills, also grow communication skills, also grow, competitive business skills. I just think it's central to everything. And most people don't have that skill.
I know, I know. We need to develop, but that's very important to remember, especially for the young generation coming on board. That listening, I call empathetic listening because it's listening, understand the cognitive, I mean, the what is going on. You intellectually understand the other speech, but then you understand emotionally why on what
Yeah.
that person is saying, and the compassionate empathy that you engage with that person and you are there to support what they might need. That can be technical information or just being present. No, so that's beautiful. I like that.
Just being present often settles the nerves of everyone at the
Yeah.
table, and that's enough to start on good footing.
And I was listening this conversation. I love it, really discussing with you. and listening your perspective and your beautiful life. I wish you all the best, Elizabeth, and keep in touch. I want to have you back in our ecosystem call.
I would love to do that. Thank you for having me. Such a nice conversation. I really
Oh,
appreciate it.
take care, Elizabeth. Speak soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.